We start on time. Mine still has 8 seconds. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Before I start, I guess I'd like staff members to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Joe.
Joe Deal, Chief of Police and Fire.
Chris Tenz, Deputy Fire Chief.
Wes Irvin, City Planner.
Go ahead, Jackie. And I'm Tom Lando, an administrative consultant with the city. Do appreciate you being here tonight. This is strictly for information. We're here to discuss the issues and questions related to the possible annexation of Thermalito. I want to stress a couple things. One is no annexation has been initiated. The second is this is for your questions, answers. We're not here to debate the annexation. I will tell you, if you, and I know a number of you do because I've talked to you, have strong feelings, submit a letter to Jackie, the city clerk, counsel care of Jackie, and you can say whatever you feel like you need to say about the annexation itself. Again, tonight, we're going to try and limit it to about an hour, and the whole idea is to answer questions you may have. There is a copy of the slide presentation and some basic questions and answers. I believe they're outside. If this gets to the point where council decides it's appropriate to initiate an annexation, we will have a full public hearing, and everybody who'd like to speak can speak on the idea of annexation. Again, tonight we're simply talking about questions, trying to answer what would happen if an annexation is initiated. And if you have questions that you don't think are answered, please submit them. Wes will provide his contact information. We're happy to try and answer every question that you have. And with that, Wes, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Tom. As Tom has mentioned, this is I'll call it an exploratory meeting to find out how sensible it is for the city to seek annexation of the Thermalito area. And state law supports efficient and orderly development, and that means typically urban areas adjacent to cities are often annexed in as part of the consolidated government process. So it's logical ultimately for Thermalito to become part of the city of Oroville. It may or may not be the time right now to do so, and that's part of what we're here to find out. Another reason is that those of you in Thermalito, many of you do all of your shopping, your church going, you're going to school and working in Oroville as well. And then during the last general plan update of the city in 2009, and again with an update in 2015, several citizens did express interest in getting annexed into the city limits, and this area is therefore in our sphere of influence for possible future annexation. Most of you have seen this map already. It's also in the handouts. The area that we're looking at are bounded by Highway 70 on the east, both sides of 162, the Forebay on the west, and Nelson Avenue generally on the north side. A little bit about demographics, a very little bit. There's about 6,700 residents in this area, 2,250 households. Home ownership is 63%, and Thermalito represents about 3% of the county's population. There are many potential advantages of annexation, and many of you here and ourselves would be debating these issues here if and when the process initiates. Local government, taxes, fire services, police services, the building permit process, planning, public works, code enforcement, financial and fiscal, health, and then animal regulations. So these are a lot of the issues that would be considered during the process of thinking about an annexation. One of the big advantages that we see at the city is that you in Thermalito, if annexed, would have a bigger voice in your own local government. Annexation would mean 2 new districts with 2 new city council members from Thermalito. The city is now transitioning into district-wide elections. So that means that Thermalito would have much more say directly in its own city government and governance, and influence the decisions that the city council makes. If any of you are interested in seeking office, we have 7 elected city council members, a citizen oversight committee, a planning commission, a 7-member historic advisory commission, parks, arts, and a housing loan advisory. So these would all be available to any of you to seek elected office or appointed office. Police services, I'll go over these fairly quickly because I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about them. The Oroville Police Department has 29 full-time positions, serves 17.1 square miles, and the Sheriff's Department has 74 deputies that service 1,677 square miles. So the police services might be less diluted if annexation were to occur. Fire department, similar story. There are 22 full-time fire personnel. The city is very proud of its weed abatement program and having limited brush fires, wildfires within the city. And there is a new fire station that is proposed at the airport, which would serve the Thermalito area. Code enforcement, the city has more of an urban orientation towards code enforcement and has to do with unsightly debris, abandoned vehicles, blighted properties, vagrancy and illegal camping, and coordination of cleanup programs. Similar for the Public Works Department, there would be an improved ratio. The city has 100 miles to cover versus 1,600 miles that the county covers for roads, street repair, pavement maintenance, and such. We have a housing department. Everyone knows that there is a severe housing shortage throughout California, and the same is true in this area. The city has several programs for affordable housing. There's a couple of brochures over here for our programs if anybody's interested. And then we are taking advantage of several state grants that are helping to build new housing, affordable housing, and to rehabilitate existing housing stock. Building and development fees are similar, probably slightly lower than at the county. And then we have had some questions already asked. So one of the questions is, will I have to construct curbs, gutters, and sidewalks if annexed into the city? That could add up to quite a bit of money for any project expansions one has. The city does have an ordinance that requires you to improve your street frontage if you spend $52,000 or more, but that program is currently suspended. We're not requiring it in our urban areas that don't have a lot of sidewalks and such right now. Taxes, you'll have the same property tax that you have now. The city does have a 5% utility tax, on PG&E, water, cable, et cetera. And there's an example in this FAQ sheet that you have about what that might mean. I think it comes to, what, $17 a month? $19 a month in the example that we have there. The $5 a year animal control tax, you would not have to pay anymore. Another question is, will my utilities change? The city does not intend to change any existing services. Thermalito Sewer and Water District would remain unchanged. Any community service districts or special assessments that you have would remain unchanged. Can I still grow cannabis? The city allows 6 plants to be grown indoors, but does not allow outdoor cultivation. The county allows outdoor cultivation of 6 plants on parcels over 5 acres. And then will I have to connect to Thermalito Water Sewer District? Many of you are on wells and septic. If your septic system fails and you're within 200 feet of an existing service line, yes, you will have to connect and pay all the appropriate fees and such. Livestock, one of the questions we've already had was, can I keep my large animals? The city's ordinance is 1 animal per half acre, horse, cow, swine, in rural residential zones, and the county's ordinance is 1 large animal per acre, I believe. So it'd be quite similar. I've powered through this pretty fast, so may have missed some things, but
So I'm going to jump back in. Again, it's not our role here to talk about the pro or con. I know very strong feelings regarding annexation. And again, you can submit those comments to the city council care of the city clerk. And it'll be, I didn't check your email address, Wes, but it's basically the same. You can send it to Wes. You can send it to council care of Wes, and he's on this sheet. The purpose tonight is to try and answer questions you may have that you have that aren't answered in this PowerPoint or on the sheet that was handed out. Again, I would say that the council has not initiated an annexation. I would also tell you, particularly those folks who feel strongly, of course, for or against, that if council were to initiate it, they would have a public hearing and you would get a chance to address them directly. Purpose of the night is strictly question and answer. With that, if you have a question, I'd appreciate if you step to the mic because we are recording this. And Leo, maybe you can unmute the mic, please, or somebody can. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to step up. As I indicated to start with, would like to take about an hour for this. Sure, come on up.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely,
I just got off work, so I'm a little scattered, but.
not a problem.
I'm here, and I made it, and I brought my big bag, because, first off, I have a few things I'd like to say. I'm a 20-year resident of Thermalito. It is my concern that there's been a lack of transparency in the public outreach regarding this annexation. I read, thank God for my 91-year-old mother, who's also a Thermalito resident, that on September 19th, there was a notice in the paper about the city's interest in annexing the area. And the meeting's 2 days later. So then I got interested in the subject and looked into it further and contacted Wes. Who's Wes? Okay, contacted Wes and I said, hey, I haven't heard anything about this. What's going on? And how will we be able to see the meeting? And the response was, we're early in the stages of this idea, and we will have speakers outside because of COVID, we'll be limited. So then I wrote back and I said, well, that's not acceptable to have speakers outside. We have wildfire smoke and we have COVID. So what about streaming? Okay, so right there again, the transparency. Really? I'm going to stand outside if it's full? Okay. So then yesterday, in the newspaper is an announcement for the Ruddy Creek Village project, okay? Then I get online and I learned that September 8th was a Ruddy Creek neighborhood meeting. September 11th was the deadline for comments. The fire hit on the 8th. The city was under evacuation, 3 days to comment on the Ruddy Creek subdivision, which is early in the stages. Well, I'd like to tell you that the Ruddy Creek subdivision, 2008, the Ruddy Creek subdivision, the very same one, was on the table. It was never completely approved by the Board of Supervisors. So anyone that's telling you it was board approved, maybe that was a city thing. That's a separate issue, but if you annex, you can move forward with the project.
Did you have any questions or,
Well, I
Because-
have a statement.
okay, well,
So my question is
I have to tell you again.
okay, here's my question.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. When you guys voted to pass the AB 430,
We didn't, but go ahead.
well, many cities did.
No, the legislature passed that, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. It was to remove the CEQA requirements for projects. LAFCO has to go, you have to go through LAFCO to get annexation. And LAFCO looks down on pocket annexations, like the other side of 18th is a city. So if you get all of Thermalito, then you won't have pocket annexations for the projects. So I will be back for the discussion of the Ruddy Creek subdivision, and I would like to have notice as a Thermalito resident.
The Ruddy Creek subdivision is directly contiguous to the city and is not dependent on this annexation. It is being heard, the annexation is being heard by LAFCO October 1, I think. Is that the date? I can't remember that. Steve, do you know what the date is?
No, the South Oroville
Oh, that's right,
annexation
it's
is
South Oroville.
October 1st.
I'm sorry.
The
It's the
Ruddy,
Lincoln annexation, I forgot.
yeah.
And I think it's a requirement, sorry, to notify the neighbors for projects. So I had no notification.
Anybody else have a question? Come on up, please. And we would appreciate it if you'd keep it to questions. I understand there are strong emotions, and really, this is an information meeting. The process hasn't even begun. This is a courtesy to talk about what annexation means.
Okay, so if you were to go, how long are we talking about that this is going to go into possibly happening?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. How long's the process?
Well, yeah, I mean,
What
we're
would
talking
happen
about.
is, in terms of process, what would happen is, this would come in front of the city council. They would have a public hearing. They would decide whether or not to initiate annexation. At that point, it wowould go to the Local Agency Formation Commissioner, LAFCO, and they have a process to actually oppose annexation if the neighbors wanted. And I'm sure they'll be happy if you contact the Local Agency Formation Commission, Butte County LAFCO. You can Google it. I'm sure they'd be happy to tell you about the process to oppose it.
Okay, the other one thing I'm concerned with, this idea of building sidewalks and curbs. Now, is that something, if you guys do go forward with this, is that something you guys, city's going to do, and then charge us as, as property owners?
The answer is no.
So,
It would happen with a new development. They would put in curb, gutter, sidewalk. It would happen, as Wes mentioned, if you put more than, did you say 55,000?
52,000.
52,000 into your property, there's a potential. I think with this annexation, the council would discuss that.
Yeah, I
I
can
don't-
speak more to the,
Go ahead.
more to that. Essentially, what's going on is we, in the city, we've actually suspended it. We have an ordinance, it's 12.12.010 in our municipal code, you can look it up. It basically states if you do more than $52,000 in work, you have to do frontage improvements. We've suspended that because the staff that's on now found it's inequitable. If you did $150,000 of work and you had an 80-foot frontage, you had to do the frontage. If you did $53,000 and you had 200 feet of frontage, you'd have to do the frontage. So we're looking at how to go about doing in lieu fees of that so that we can put that money together with other dollars and go chase grant dollars to do full sections. There's many sections of town where you have a half-mile stretch, from curb gutter and sidewalk to curb gutter and sidewalk. If you're in the middle of that, it makes no sense to have someone do improvement on a property and then have a little piece of frontage on it. What our plan is to do is to pool those monies and then go after grant dollars, safe routes to school money, that sort of thing, in order to do full sections at a time. So the answer is no, you would not have to do it. We would not force that upon you. No, we don't have that in place at this point in time. And if full subdivisions are done, yes, they would do those improvements, and we would do further improvements, full sections at a time as we pooled those dollars.
There was one other thing Wes mentioned I want to clarify, and that is the state plumbing code says if we're within 200 feet, 250 feet of a sewer, doesn't matter if you're in city or county, you're going to have to hook to the sewer if it's, well, if you're within 250 feet and your septic fails. Doesn't matter if you're annexed or not.
Well, then, that's basically it, that,
Okay?
everybody's saying you're gonna have to put in curbs, and I'm thinking if everybody does, they're not gonna match, you know?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Come on up.
Hello, good evening, fellow residents. I just have a couple of questions, mostly for police and fire. I've lived in Thermalito about 30 years, so I'm kind of familiar with the area. Lived in Oroville all my life. So I understand the dynamics that we have here. So for police and fire, you have 29 positions. How many of those are full?
In the police department, there's 6 openings right now,
Wes, you can do
6
that.
vacancies. The slide
Or maybe
was mentioned 29 positions. Right beneath that on that slide, it showed something about MLEs, 9 positions. So those are 9 in addition to those 29. And those are our, for lack of a better term, CSOs, community service officers. We call municipal law enforcement. They do a lot of our traffic and things like that. So there's 2 vacancies in that department. So between the 2, there's 7.
Okay, so of your 29 positions, I'm familiar with how city and county government works. You can have 29 positions, but say you're only actually staffing 23 because you want a buffer in your budget. How many are you actually staffing?
So like I said, there's 5 vacancies. We are actively recruiting for all 5 of them. The
So-
intention is to fill every one of those positions.
To have 29?
Correct. Well, 29 plus the 9 MLEs.
Well, and how many MLEs do you have full right now?
There's 2 vacancies. We have 7 that are full.
Okay.
So, and we're actively recruiting for those positions as well. They're all those positions are posted on the city website. If there's 5 police position candidates that come in that can get through the entire process, my intention is to hire and fill those 5 vacancies.
For fire, I don't know that having Oroville City Fire is really a benefit to us out in Thermalito. We have Cal Fire 2 blocks down the road, a humongous fire station. I don't think the incentive of having Oroville Fire in response to us is any incentive to us at all. We've had how many grass fires this year? We've lost how many houses this year out in Thermalito? Because of overgrown fields not being maintained. I don't know that your incentive of police and fire is enough to get Thermalito residents behind you. So I don't, what are your plans for Thermalito to incentivize us to support you? We'll support you if you can, police and fire is it for us. Police, fire, maybe we debate, I don't know, maybe all those things, homeless, those are our incentives. I don't care about sidewalks, I don't have to build a sidewalk, I live down a private road. But, what are your plans?
So currently, the city is working on putting a station right at the airport, and that's in the planning process right now. The city of Oroville's had over probably 60 grass fires this year. We've lost 0 homes. And a lot of that is because of our prevention program is a lot more enforced than the county. We have a stricter ordinance for weed abatement that I myself personally go out and take care of to ensure the public safety. We require fire breaks around anything over an acre. Anything under an acre has to be mowed down. to 4 inches or less. So by our prevention programs is how we try to prevent that more. So, and then we also have an auto aid agreement with the county, CAL FIRE. Those resources would still be available.
I think and I'm speaking out of turn, but I think it's true, the council has indicated their priority is police and fire, and the city is in fact fiscally sound, unlike some other entities. So we have the resources to do that. I would expect us to continue to staff up those departments. And beyond that, well, I'll just stop there.
Well, what do you
I
mean?
mean, I'm not in any way gonna
Wait a minute,
denigrate-
let's back it up. You put it out there, so
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Okay.
You said more fiscally sound than other entities. Explain.
I think we are in a better financial position than, I'm not sure, because I haven't followed the county's budget, but any other city in Butte County, for sure. I don't know about the county's position, because I just haven't followed that budget.
Right, because if you want to incentivize us to agree with your proposal of annexation, you're gonna have to convince us that getting out from underneath Corey Honey's leadership of his sheriff's department is gonna be a good idea.
Well, we work cooperatively with them. There's still programs that the sheriff would provide. And I remember now the other point I was going to make, which Wes made earlier, and that is that if you were to annex, you'd have a huge voice in city government, because you would probably have 2 folks out of the 7 on council based on the size of the area annexing.
I mean, I think I saw on some FAQ, it might have been this one, where phones are being answered and you have officers in the community 24 hours a day. We already have that with the sheriff's department. They're already there. Somebody answers the phone every time you call. So what's the, what? why
It's
is-
the issue of coverage. I understand what you're saying, and again, I'm not denigrating any service the county provides. The sheriff, as was mentioned, has to provide that service to the entire county. So they certainly could be out of area in an emergency, and we would obviously be closer, but I'm not going to, again, sheriff provides a great service.
Right,
I'm
but
not
if
gonna
the
disagree with
sheriff
you.
has his deputies committed somewhere because there's something going on in the county, like they already have mutual aid agreements. So like he could call CHP. They could dispatch out, hey, Orville City,
So-
we need help.
So ma'am, I understand what you're saying, and again, there'll be a time and place to argue your concerns and whether you want to or don't want to annex. That'll be in front of the city council if they decide to initiate annexation. I understand what you're saying, and I think we've given you the best answer we can.
Okay, so I have an acre of land. I have 20 chickens and a rooster. So I was thinking about getting a pig or 2 to raise and butcher for meat. I was thinking also of getting a steer, but I have an acre, so
Well, you
in the
can't-
county, I could almost do that because it's not chickens they're counting all together, right? But here's the thing. If
You
live
actually
in
can't,
city
I'm sorry,
limits-
you can't actually do all that in the county either. If you're over 5 acres, yes, you can. If you're over, we're actually, if you compare the two, please take the time to compare the two, our proposal on what we have. Actually, this is our existing ordinance that we already have based on the rural residential and residential ag properties. They're less restrictive than what the county actually has as a whole.
Right.
So I think if you take a look at that, you'll find that's it. And once again, it's about answering questions and being,
Right.
being transparent with you, which I think we are. So take a look at that. But I think if you go through it, you'll find that based on comparing the county's animal husbandry ordinance and ours, you'll find that actually ours is a little less restrictive than what they have in the county.
Not necessarily. So in this ordinance on livestock, it says poultry over 12 weeks, you can have a total of 6. Is that an acre? Anybody know?
No, these are, if you look down, those are the small ones. You can have them all the way down to single-family dwelling units. You can have 6 on a single-family dwelling unit, so that's.
Right, I have a single-family dwelling unit, I have an acre, I have 20 chickens and a rooster. Is this 6 chickens on an acre? Or is it 6 per half acre?
Can she have 20 chickens
No.
on an acre?
No,
Yes, you can.
Okay, but poultry up here says 6 total.
You asked me, can you have 20 chickens on an acre? Yes, you can.
Okay, how many total can I have?
You get 6.
How many total on an acre? How many total?
What?
Chickens.
Chickens? Just chickens. Are we
Yep.
gonna, well, we'll add up all your things. You can't have 20 chickens and 4 cows. Then you have to,
Can I
there's a
have 40
combination.
chickens, 50 chickens,
not gonna-
100 chickens?
if
I'm
you
here
make
to
a
ask
propo-
questions and you're here to answer.
Well, we
No, I'm here
can't,
to be courteous with you
I am.
and try to do the best I can. If you have a specific situation, please submit it. I'd be happy to get back to you. And we'll publish all the answers on the website, so anybody who wants to see that will be able to go there and see all that for
But I
you.
think a lot of people in the community out there, we have a huge Hmong community, and they have lots of livestock. They have
So,
chickens, they have
again,
rabbits, they have ducks.
if you submit those questions, and Wes, I hope you're writing these down.
So-
We will provide answers and we'll put them up, on our website.
Put them up on the
Next-
website for you all
okay,
to see.
Next question.
So
This is an
before
informational meeting, right?
We also, if one wants to exceed those limitations, we have a use permit process that can be followed.
Pay a fee, okay. So, after this discussion is done, what's the next step for your committee?
We haven't really gone through that process, but we will talk eventually with city council and see if they would like to initiate an annexation process. If they would, there'll be a public hearing, council will sit up here, they will hear everybody speak, and everybody, instead of questions and answers, it will be people citing their opinions, and again, certainly heard a few already, regarding annexation. Ultimately, council would take a vote either to initiate or not. If they decide to initiate, then the process moves to LAFCO, where there is a process to support or turn down an annexation.
And more public meetings.
Is your committee LAFCO, is that what you are, or what?
No, LAFCO is an
Are you
independent
just the
body.
planning commission of the city?
It's called the Local Agency Formation Commission, again. And if you provide the information to Wes, we'll give that to you. It's a Butte LAFCO. If you go to Butte LAFCO, Google it, you will see. They're the ones who will decide whether, if it were initiated, whether it would go ahead. And there's a whole protest process set by law in which folks, if they don't want to do it, can oppose it.
So I know that a few people received a letter from the city regarding the possible annexation. Do you know who was supposed to be getting that letter?
We actually, there's specific laws on how you have to notice these meetings. It's based on the number of population there. We've followed all the required laws there were for
Well-
noticing a public meeting.
We just wanted to get the information out. I'll say one more time. This is nothing formal. We aren't in a formal process yet. We are simply talking about information regarding a potential annexation. If we were to proceed, there are a whole series of steps we would go through, and you'd be standing there presumably in front of the city council, telling them what your issues are and how you felt.
Well,
And-
but you wouldn't have done this if your next action wasn't going to be recommending to whoever it is that you recommend this.
No, that's not true. That is not true at all. We adopted a general plan which says this property ought to be annexed, and that was adopted in 2009, I believe. And we have what's called a sphere of influence, which indicates property. The whole idea is that you have an efficient delivery of service and efficient urban government. It doesn't mean we're going to go ahead.
Can you clarify, isn't this the city council meeting?
No, it is not. We're all staff.
You guys are, who are?
We identified ourselves before,
Sorry, you're
but
not
we're,
city council.
we are not city council.
They're-
Police department, fire department, planning, community development. We are staff, we are here simply to let people ask questions, to encourage you, however you feel, whatever your questions are, to submit them to Wes, which is why his name's there. Again, I will say that if their council decides that they'd like to pursue this, there'll be a full public hearing in front of council. That's not the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of this meeting,
How do we get noticed of that meeting?
if you sign up, is the list, if you sign up on the list, we will notify you if it comes in front of council.
So how do my residents get notified?
Well, you're in the currently you're in the county. What would happen, because this would affect you, it would go through the normal noticing process based on the population out there, based on.
We,
It has to be noticed multiple ways. This was noticed the same way that'll be noticed. And if you want to be a specific person of interest, if you sign up on there, we also make sure you'll specifically, individually get those letters as well.
yeah, I understand that. Again, this is a question and answer period. It's not a formal annexation period.
But I will tell you this, nobody in our neighborhood, Thermalito, was notified other than social media of this event. And the few minor amounts of information that was given by this, you had to look for it, which is also asinine, excuse me for saying.
Did you have a question you wanted to ask with regard to this?
I have several questions, but I will get there when she's done, sorry.
Were actually deleted and missing before this evening's.
Well, we didn't do that. I would,
It's not our Facebook.
excuse me, I think we ought to let other people come on
I
up.
agree. I just want to say that
Thanks.
I don't think you have a discussion without a plan to move forward.
Come on up.
I'd like to know.
But I would say that any questions you have, and again,
I may be one of the youngest members of this community. I may be one of the few people and my wife here who have moved in here within the last few years.
I got it here.
I will say this. We moved to Thermalito to get away from the city. We're not wanting to annex in for additional tax hikes, additional builds for whatever reason. We're also looking at, Butte County has a very good program of getting rid of the riffraff in our neighborhood. Thermalito has, since we've moved in, we've seen a massive difference in the transients and druggies that walk through our neighborhoods.
And we live on 10th.
And we live on 10th, one of the most busiest streets in Thermalito.
so,
So my question is,
Across the way.
my question is for police and fire. If we have a transient who's causing trouble up and down the street, going through trash cans, leaving his mess behind, which I understand they do. I mean, it's fine. They're looking for cans and whatever else and whatnot.
Most of them wave and say hi to us.
Yeah, most of them ask for a bottle of water. I'm fine with giving them that. Okay, no problem with that. But I ask them to move on when they're done. We had a guy who was camping out where they're planning on building on to the neighborhood on 10th Street that's already there, where they've sold the property and expanding onto, who was camping out in the tree line there.
Which we were not
Started
informed
2
of.
fires next to my neighbor's house, which I had to go down and tell him, hey, not happening. Dump a couple jugs on his fire. Tell him, get the hell out of here. Do something about it, he says. Okay, so I called Butte County Sheriff, sat at the end of the road. Butte County shows up in 15 minutes, walks out, tells the guy, gather all your belongings, get the hell out of here. What are you guys gonna do for that? Because I work on 5th Street, or 5th Avenue, and that place is trash. I work at Sierra Pacific. What do you guys, where's the incentive for us to keep that riffraff out of our damn neighborhood? And they're all druggies.
Right across
That
the
guy, the guy that was living in the woods, and I will tell you this, the guy that was living right there in that tree line, he was on dope. I know what it looks like because I cleaned myself up. I'm 10 years sober, bub. I want to know what you guys are going to do for that. If we call city police and you guys and we're annexed in and we say, hey, I got this druggie down the way, he's lighting fires in the fucking field and I got, excuse my language,
He's fired
and
up.
I've got this guy telling me do something about it, bud. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna send officers out to help me out?
I think that's the frustrating thing is we're not seeing it right on the other side.
We're not.
Seeing Motel 6 and that whole area and the river where we don't even take our kids anymore, where people are lighting fires right down the street from where we
We're
wanna
smoking
go.
dope right on the river edge.
Literally to the, you
You
know,
guys, come on.
that side's not clean. What is
Okay.
it that's motivating us to join
we
that?
hear you.
We clean up our neighborhood.
We hear you.
As
First
a
of all,
community.
give the chief a chance to respond, but second of
Let me
all,
respond.
we heard your question. I want to get a few more people up, so thank you. Go ahead.
First and foremost, congratulations on your sobriety. Second of all, I think we'd handle it the same way you just said the sheriff's office handled it. If we get a call saying that somebody's there and causing a problem like you did, we come out and we deal with it. The analogy we're using of Fifth, I really like the one of Motel 6 in the river, far more than one person. The one person scenario you gave is a very simple solution. Let's get them out of here. Let's come out and do it. And we do that time and time again. I wish I would have brought to you the number of calls we handle like that in the city because it's in the hundreds.
No, I
we
totally
do it all the
understand,
time.
but you guys are talking about being 29 understaffed. and you're filling 5 positions, or what was it?
We have a total of 29 available positions.
29
They're
available.
understaffed by 5.
By 5, okay? So
Yes.
you're understaffed by 5, and you're planning on taking on this whole Thermalino side? That's 150 jobs right there itself, almost.
Our neighborhood's bigger than.
Well, I don't think we'd ever be able to find 150 cops like this.
True, but our neighborhood's a lot bigger than you think
And
it
it's,
is.
I understand,
Then you're gonna be taking police officers out of the city where the major issues are at, like we said, hundreds of people along the river.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And you're gonna send one guy out to deal with 5 tweakers on my property trying to break into my truck when my pit bull's trying to eat them?
Well, you
Come on.
gotta understand something, okay? If you give me just a minute to answer your question and make some points here. I worked for 15 years for the Butte County Sheriff's Office. I fully understand what your neighborhood's like. I've policed that neighborhood for a good portion of my career. I've policed south of Wyandotte for a good portion of my career before it became the city. I'm very familiar with policing in the county, very. To say that we're only going to send one officer, that's not accurate. Do I think the police department will grow with this in years? Yes, we have a lot of future growth plans. 29 right now is what we have right now. If the city were to annex, I don't think there's any doubt that the police and fire department will grow because let's face it, we're going to need more officers to police it. I understand that. I don't know that I was supposed to talk about our staffing levels here. I answer your question. I don't have a problem answering. You took the time to come down here. I want to provide you an answer.
And I appreciate that.
I really do feel that if the city were to annex the Thermalito area, the police and fire, the city council will do what they need to do to make this police and fire station of the adequate staff to police it. We've done that in the South Orville area. I worked for the county when A, B, C, D, Elgin, all the South Orville area was in the county. Went through that process. Now we police it as the city, and honestly, we don't have a problem with it at all.
South side still
Like,
is
there's been
shithole.
drive-bys through the south.
it is.
the South area on a regular, I'm
there-
on all the
it's-
Facebook.
we
groups.
understand-
So my point is what we're seeing
Hold on a
is
second,
not
ma'am.
what we want
Let me
for our
finish. Let me
community.
finish, okay?
'Cause
There
our
are
community's
issues in South Orville. There's issues in Thermalito. There always will be. We'll try to
Right.
address them as we can. We can only deal with them as we know that they're there, though.
True.
And I understand where you're coming from, and we do the best we can.
Okay.
Okay.
Fire-wise, you guys, I just want to, I want to be perfectly clear about this. As this lady had mentioned earlier,
Could stand up.
we have Cal Fire right down the road. What's the incentive to have Orville Fire come through and add on? I mean, our coverage there is actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, and with the
And there's a
city,
Substation right there out down the street.
with the city, it'll
Yeah.
increase because the city does potentially have plans to put a facility, police and fire station out at the airport. So that would add an additional resource to what's already there. And the city and the county work hand in hand every single day. We assist each other. We're assisting the county right now with the Bear Fire. We help them all the time. They help us. You would probably still see them every once in a while.
And staffing for you guys would increase too also, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, I have a few more questions about the
Sir,
proprietaryisms
okay.
of us being annexed, as in property tax or utilities. What does that look like for us? How does it look for us who are still paying mortgages, who have a Butte County subsidized loan?
I understand. So let me answer your question, please. Property taxes do not change, period, okay? There is a utility tax, and I think it might have been mentioned before you arrived, and you're right, it's a 5% tax on utilities. I don't know what your utilities
In
are.
here, on about
I didn't
500
grab that.
bucks
I'll
in
grab that on my
utilities,
way
out.
it's
Yeah, grab it on the way.
$19 a month.
Again, if the council decides to initiate annexation, you'll have a chance to step up and talk to it. What I'd appreciate is if a few others get a chance to come up and hopefully ask questions. I would again say, anybody who has a question can submit it to Wes. He's on that sheet. I know many of you have a strong feeling on annexation. You can also submit that care of Wes to the city council. We will make sure they get all your comments. And you can look at their packet and make sure that we actually gave them to them. Please.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
while the next person's coming up, I'll just run through real quickly. The third, on the
Come on
Q&A
up.
sheet.
Come on up.
The third one down, second one down speaks to the utility users tax. There's an example there, runs about 500 bucks in utilities a month. The user tax on that is about $19.75. A 96 gallon garbage service currently is 3379 in the county, it's 3316 in the city, so essentially the same price. So that's
Go
the
ahead,
basic
ma'am.
utility stuff.
Recently just became a Thermalito resident as of October of last
Heard
year.
that.
After being burned out from Paradise and being through all of this with our city council, my question is, and I was just brought to my attention after doing this research to find out about this, that there's a bubble annex that's going to take place in 2030 that's supposed to encompass a lot of outlying areas of Orville.
That's not true.
That's not true.
That's not
Okay.
true.
Just
actually-
fact checking,
Yeah.
because my question to that was, why are we in a rush to do this now if you're going to annex us in 2030?
There is no proposal to annex you in 2030. That's all I can say to that.
Okay.
There's not a bubble annexation.
My other question is, now that my name is on that list, I will be properly notified and have an opinion and get to vote on this?
You will be able to express your thoughts to the city council should the city council initiate the annexation. After that, if they were to do that, it goes to this thing called the Local Agency Formation Commission, and they have a process by which you can actually protest being annexed into the city.
Okay.
And they can explain that process to you.
Okay, because I live in Thermalito, didn't really pay too much to the City of Orville's city council.
Okay.
Because obviously in Paradise, you had to live in Paradise to be on the council. I don't live in Orville, I live in Thermalito. How many seats are on the Orville City Council that gets to vote whether or not they suck my little Paradise into Orville?
There are 6 council members and a mayor, so 7 people would vote. And if a majority decided to go ahead, then it would go ahead. It would proceed to, again, to LAFCO, which is a group ultimately based on state law that decides whether or not it can in fact and should annex.
And are any of those council positions available this year, becoming
Yes.
a reelection?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have to live in the city of Orville to be on that city council?
Yes, which is why we've said several times,
But if you were
Thermalito,
annexed in, that
Right.
we would be able to have a say in that?
You'd actually get two out of 6
perhaps
seats.
2.
That's what it does.
You had to live in the city of Orville to be on the council.
And the answer is yes.
Doesn't Art Happy live out of the city?
No, he's in the city. He's out in the area that is in fact annexed to the city already. He is in the city.
So I
Both
could live
he
in a
and Scott
cardboard
Thompson
box
live
by
out
the
in that
airport
area.
and be good to go.
Oh, yes, address.
No, he lives in the
No, he's
city.
lived there for multiple years.
Yes, he does.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
appreciate your time.
Did you have a question, sir? You've been standing for a while.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of you.
That's okay. Mind if I drop this? 'Cause
No,
I've been
no,
talking
we're
without
6
it.
feet apart and more, so.
Cool. Mine is actually for the chief of police here. And I do know that since they did the increased sales tax in the city of Orville, that was to go to help fund officers, correct? It was a 1% increase?
It was a 1% public safety increase, yes.
Correct.
So
How many
it's go-
officers did you employ during that time since you've gotten it? I'm not MLEs, I'm talking sworn officers, ones that are gonna have a piece on their side that if I'm in trouble are gonna roll,
4.
even dead in 4. Can you tell me how many officers you had in 1980?
Off the top of my head, I can't.
You probably can't, but I remember I was a young buck, got my driver's license in 1980, and you couldn't go through town without having one of them follow the young kid because, well, we were doing stuff we shouldn't have.
Well,
Don't leave out Browning. We had 2 motorcycle police back in those days. Those guys were very efficient. I don't know why we don't have them now. I know we had one officer went down here a while back in an accident just down from the station.
Right.
I know you had more police, or just about as many as you do now, and you're covering twice the area you did in 1980.
we'll get an answer to that question, because I would respectfully disagree. I bet you that there were many fewer officers, but the town was also much smaller back in 1980.
The town was much
We'll
smaller.
get an answer
but
for you.
I do know that I had a family member sit on this board just recently until they retired. They weren't a council member, but they were one of the to go to, ask questions.
Okay.
I've got a
Good.
family member that sits down there as a volunteer. I kind of do know the numbers, and we all grew up and born and raised in this town. So I'm just kind of curious as to how many more you plan on putting in, because you're talking over 6,000 people you're going to bring in. Any idea how many officers, full-time, not MLEs? Because I know you go down and beat on the door down at the municipal, and for almost 3 years, that door's been kept locked.
We have them back at the police department.
They
They're-
moved them out of that
they
office.
They still can work down there, but during their normal days, they're inside the police department. As far as the numbers, I don't know. I think that's going to be something that'll be determined if it's chosen that they're going to move forward with the annexation, then they'll entertain the talks on how many staff members are going to be increased in the departments.
And my guess is that we'll analyze that before it even gets to council and say, what is the cost of the annexation? How many officers, how many firefighters do we need? So I think, by the time we get to LAFCO, I guarantee we'll have that number.
And when you get to LAFCO, there's also, if 50%, if I'm not mistaken, disagree with this, it's going to be thrown out the door?
That is absolutely true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about one, come on up, how about one more?
I've been doing it all day. Hi.
Hi.
I have actually a couple of questions. Law enforcement, fire, love you guys. You guys, I totally respect you, and like others have mentioned that there was a concern about the amount of officers compared to expanding out to the Thermalito area. I used to live down here, so I know that there have been nights when there's 2 officers on duty, and that was due to lack of funding. And I know that, I think that you took a pay cut recently or didn't take a raise. So I can see where this is going to be something that we're going to be making more, our annexing us in will increase the income to the city, of course. So,
So a couple comments. One is, you're absolutely correct. Prior to the sales tax increase, the staff did take a 10% cut. That has been restored.
good.
And the city, as I mentioned before, is in fact fiscally sound.
Okay.
I think that the annexation, and we'll analyze this, but I think the annexation would actually, is going to wind up costing more money in terms of services than it brings in. You're right, there are additional taxes that come in, but you're also right, as you talked to the chief, we'll hire more people.
And that's a good thing, because you need it.
Yes.
Fire, my concern is with our CAL FIRE station. It has people that are normal, God, I can't think right now, I apologize. But we have career staff and then also the volunteers. My concern about that station is that we've already shut down 2 volunteer stations in Chico. And I don't want to have that happen to this station. They're good guys. You guys are great.
Yeah, so-
And I appreciate you guys.
That station that you're referring to is a state facility, not a county facility. It's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
They do house a county engine there that may get moved, but there'll always be state engines there. We're talking about potentially, if this was to happen, adding an additional station and better coverage, faster coverage with that additional station if this was to happen. So if this was to happen, we would obviously request that station. And there's plans in place for that if this was to happen. So there would be an increase to fire personnel in that area.
And I do know that my son was a volunteer, and he was used when the career staff were out fighting fires.
Mm-hmm.
Those volunteers did back up the CAL FIRE stations. So I know that he worked with city fire, great guys. So, like I say, I have nothing to say bad about law enforcement or fire. Total respect. My one item that I'd like to mention is my husband bought a vehicle. I bought a vehicle from here in town. He bought one down in the Bay Area. They weren't sure about the lot lines as far as whether we were in county or city, and we were in county. So I just want to make a statement that I did get a refund of about $340 for my vehicle, and he got about $400 from his.
That's absolutely correct.
So the taxes are a little higher. But,
Understood.
so I guess my other question would be is if this were to go through the city, the council and all of that, in the end, would that be a vote from everybody in the county that if we were annexed in, or is?
The The answer is that's very complex. So there's ways, the gentleman indicated, there is a way to protest an annexation. If there less than 25% of the registered voters protest, the annexation would move ahead. 25 to 50%, then there is a vote.
Right,
More than 50% is defeated.
okay.
So that oversimplification, but that's the
Yeah,
answer.
because my concern was that it was just going to be a city vote. Well, of course, the city voters are going to see that their property taxes, because there are bonds that are added onto your property taxes. I've had them when I owned a home here. And so those taxes would probably decrease theirs and then also increase ours.
I'll have to verify that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that one. So what I'd like to say is this. If you have additional questions, contact Wes Irvin. His contact information is on the sheet. If you are just downright have an opinion and you want the council to see it, send it to the city council, care of Wes, okay? If you want to be on a mailing list, please see Dawn, make sure you're on it. If you have tenants and you want them to be notified, put their address on it. We will send it to everyone. I do not know where this is headed because we haven't talked to council about it. And with that, I'm going to say good night and thank you for coming.
Wait.
Not 7 yet.
Wait. Okay, I've lived in Butte County, right where I've been for 66 years. Bought in a county, want to stay in a county. This here are people that could not make the meeting tonight because of the virus. There's 237 signatures on here that we gathered in 5 days that do not want to be in the.
So I understand what you're saying. As I
Oh, here
said,
you go, they're yours, look through them, they're all in Thermalito.
I
Doesn't
know,
matter.
you can hand them to us, ma'am, but they don't do any good in terms of process.
But they're here.
You
And
can
people
submit,
that-
that's why I said, I'm sorry, but that's why I said to submit to West your comments that you want the council to have. We will forward those to the city council.
They're all here.
One more, go ahead.
So it's just really quick.
Yeah.
For those neighbors and folks like myself who I just got a trickle down through a text from a friend, this wasn't widely dispersed, so there's a lot of people here, obviously, that that couldn't come. There's a lot of people that couldn't come. So for those people that can't walk over here and sign up to get on the list for mail distributions, how do those folks, my network,
You would tell them. We'll do our very best to notify people, but certainly you can tell them. We'll do our very best to notify when and if this comes in front of city council. That's all I can tell you.
We have set up a mailing list, email list for South Oroville. We're doing some work in South Oroville. We can set up a similar mailing list for Thermalito that everyone on that list would get notified of any
And
activity
again, tell
coming
your
up.
neighbors to send a note to Wes and we'll get them on the list.
absolutely, but we don't all know every single neighbor. And-
No, I understand that. We'll do the best we can.
And we do follow all the
Well, I'm not
we
worried about the rules. They don't care about the rules.
Are you putting
we
it in
follow
the
all the notices.
newspaper?
It's in
Yes.
newspaper, it's on our website,
More
yeah.
than 2 days in advance?
We're required to put it in more than 2 days, and we did.
More than 2, or that's it? More than 2.
Anyway, we'll follow all the legal ways we need to do
Did you
it,
send
and we
this
try to
one
get
out
them
on
out.
the- on the
We
second?
additionally will take the mailing list and do that. My suggestion would be also to expand that to everybody you know. There's 25 people here, tell 5 people or whatever, and they can get that stuff to Wes. We'll formulate a listserv to make sure that that goes out anytime. Everything we're doing in South Oroville, we're doing the same thing. We have about 400 people on that one now because it's grown just by the word of mouth as well, and we're happy to get that out to everybody.
I want to make one comment. I thought
Go
that
ahead.
was a very rude comment. What you guys have set up here, because people are frustrated and they don't want to get run over, and I thought your comment was very rude. So I'm pretty sure I'm saying out loud.
Thanks.
Have a nice day.
Have a good one.
I
I just
have,
had two really
Go ahead.
quick questions.
Sure.
If I understood right, the only way, the part where we have to protest it, and then if a certain percentage protest it, then we would get a vote?
That's correct.
Okay, I was making sure I followed that.
You follow that correctly?
know that at least our fire department, I'm not sure on the police, per capita, it's one of the busiest stations in the city. So is it hopefully goals to improve it? Because I think they could like improve anyways.
I think our goal is to improve it regardless.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just know they're a very busy station.
Yeah.
So
They do have somebody on Teams
Yeah.
who wishes to speak.
I have one person on Teams. I just want to know if they want to say anything or, I haven't heard anything from them, but.
Okay.
So it looks like they don't want to.
All right.
So.
Again, I want to emphasize this, that no decision's been made. I really appreciate you coming out. We will submit any question you have, and we'll definitely try and answer it. And we hear that from a number of you, there's no doubt about that. And again, you can submit, and you did submit a bunch of notes, but submit to Wes comments that you'd like the council to have. And I truly appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.